DawgNation. Welcome into Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. I'm Hannah Chalker alongside SEC Country's Georgia recruiting reporter Jeff Sintel. We've got a really great show coming up for you today. We're going to talk about how the SEC championship affects recruiting. We're going to talk about upcoming official visits. We're going to talk about the Georgia High School State Championships this weekend and a commitment that happened on Saturday that fell a little bit under the radar. But first, Jeff, got to ask, how about them Dogs?
I guess we're supposed to revel in it a little bit. So everybody out there, just stretch your fingers out, and I'm going to tell you this right now. This is the very first Before the Hedges of the reigning SEC champion Georgia Bulldogs. So we always talk about the future here, Hannah, but the present looks pretty good too as well.
You were there. How did the recruits react to that final score, 28-7 over Auburn? You said that the car horn or the train horn or whatever it is, the touchdown horn in the bins was going off all night.
I tell you what, that Auburn defense was blaring because Georgia reached the end zone 4 times. It's that score that'll be on T-shirts everywhere now. And it's a different recruiting pitch now, Hannah. It's no longer come to Georgia, help us win an SEC. It's come to Georgia and help us win another one, and another one, and another one. And maybe we'll go after a natty as well. I mean, Georgia's coaches are on the road right now this week, and they're walking in and maybe brushing their shoulders off just a little bit because they're coming in as the SEC champions. I spoke to one recruit from Virginia, the nation's #1 cornerback in the 2020 class, told me that I've got a new team to think about now because the new team has won the SEC. That's Sheridan Jones out of Virginia Beach in Virginia. He's basically thoroughly impressed. It's almost like Georgia now has a seat at the big boy table now. Okay,
well, besides Sheridan Jones, DawgNation and you, Jeff, were able to talk to 30 recruits on Sunday in the aftermath of the SEC championship. Who had the best response?
I don't know. I think Bill Norton had a pretty good one. He's out of Memphis, that area. He said something like "them some dogs." I don't know how that comes across as they some dogs. I don't know how that comes across in a text message, but and then John Fitzpatrick, the 3-star tight end from Marist, who's actually playing for a state title this week, said UGA is back for good. And look at that first name, Aaron Brule. I call him the Swiss Army knife recruit. He's a jack boy because he jacks guys up. Could be a corner, could be a linebacker, could be a safety. He was so impressed with Georgia, he said his signing day for December the 20th, and there was some indecision about LSU there, but after watching that one right there, you see a young man that's ready to play. And I do like the words from Tramel Walthor the best. I think he's probably my favorite one. That just puts a higher mark on where we should be in the following years to come, and it puts more fire behind all UGA players and upcoming players to maintain this success. I mean, that's great stuff right there.
Yeah, and with that early signing period, I know we've been talking about it on the show, but now it's only 2.5 weeks away. Time just absolutely flies by. What implications did the SEC championship have on that and the pressure that's there?
Well, I think it just puts Georgia in the boat for a new layer of recruit. Maybe they've got some guys that maybe had Georgia as a 3 or 4. Maybe now Georgia's a 1 or 2 or 3. And I think the big thing right now is I know a lot of people are worried about Amazon.com and their 2-day shipping and how they're going to get their gifts. Well, recruiters and coaches know they've only got about 13 recruiting days left until the dead period falls on the 18th, and then early signing period starts on December the 20th. You see Georgia's class that we said on the show last week. Georgia has 18 public commitments right there. I think there's fewer spots than those 6 available in real time. And right now, only 10 of Georgia's commitments, as of late last week, have told me that they plan to sign on early signing day.
You know, you were one of the lucky ones. You got to be at the new bins for the very first SEC champions in that location, Georgia. You know, final thoughts, final takeaways on Georgia recruiting at the bins.
Well, I think it's funny how a lot of the major targets actually made their way into the venue. And for instance, Jamari Sawyer was there. He was there to support 2 of his high school teammates, Trey Blunt, who actually got his first career start out of Pace Academy against Auburn, and then also Andrew Thomas, the big offensive tackle who started all year for Georgia. Jamari ended up in the Auburn section of all things, but that 5-star recruit, we had a big update with him, just kind of seeing where he's at today on the blog and how he felt about Georgia going forward. You just spoke to a lot of people at that dome, and not a lot of people were really, fully involved as a fan way back in 1980, 1981, 82. I've heard from a lot of people that tell me that this right here has been the most satisfying year of their Georgia fandom. And to just bring it right back around to the recruits, you know these 16, 17-year, 18-year-old guys, if you throw out Tim Tebow, some of those guys are starting to forget that guy. It's been so long since he played college football. So when you can say Georgia and all those negative recruiting parts where they would say, when's the last time Georgia won an SEC title?
2017. It's no longer 2005.
No longer.
Well, all the celebration overshadowed a big commitment on Saturday. That sophomore, yes, sophomore in high school, defensive tackle Nazir Stackhouse. So what do we know about him? What we do know is that he's the first commit for the 2020 class. Yep. But what else do we know about this guy?
Well, first of all, really smart dude. He wants to be a chemical engineer. He chose Georgia over the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Nice.
He sees himself as, it's very interesting because he's a youngster and everybody wonders, what's up with that commitment? You're going to change so many times. He thinks his commitment's going to stick. He says 8 times out of 10 I can see my life. And he says 8 times out of 10 that I will probably stay a Georgia commit. I know some fans will sit there and worry about that. The other thing that stood out to me is Kirby Smart had a personal role in his recruiting. Wow. And he thought that was maybe what put it over the top, his kind of kinship he developed with Coach Smart, who just happens to be the coach of the SEC champions right now.
Well, Jeff, being the great reporter that you are, you actually went and met up with Nazir Stackhouse to get to know him a little bit better, and he actually told you why he picked the Dawgs over Alabama. We've got the video. Let's check it out.
All right, man, we're here with Nazir Stackhouse, the newest commitment for Georgia in the class of 2020. Hey, man, why Georgia? Why did you choose Georgia?
Well, I chose Georgia first off because it's like 45 minutes away from my house, and second off, me and Coach Kirby Smart had this connection, and the connection was really strong between me and him. And I know that Kirby Smart came from Bama, and he was a defensive coordinator. And so, so Kirby Smart asked me certain questions. He was like, how many brothers do I have, or where do I live? What am I doing in school? How do I play on the field? And so at first, all the other offers that I had, I just like put those to the side when I thought about Georgia. And it's funny because I committed before the game, and it's not like I made a prediction that they was going to win against Auburn. It's just that I felt as though that Georgia was the right school for me. I felt as though that.
You're the first commitment in the class of 2020. Are you going to be that Pied Piper? Or are you going to be that guy getting other guys to come play with you? What does that mean to you to be the first guy in 2020?
Well, honestly, I really didn't know I was the first guy to commit in 2020. Second off, I know that if I commit to Georgia, there's going to be other colleges going to try to offer me at that moment. And a lot of people asked me a question. They was like, are you going to hold this commitment? Because you have 2 more years. You know you're a sophomore. You have 2 more years. And I tell them at the same time, I'm loyal. If I'm going to commit, I'm just going to commit, and I'm going to stay with this team because I know what to aim for, and I know that there's going to be other players after me committing. And so if they commit and if they decommit and go to other colleges, that's their choice. Like my mom always says, that you're not a baby anymore. I can't baby you. So whatever you choose, that's your choice. And so my choice was to commit to UGA.
Awesome. Nazir Stackhouse. They call him Triple B.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today on Before the Hedges and DawgNation.com.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Awesome stuff from Nazir. Jeffy, you also told you he had a relationship, or he has a cool relationship with 2 of the current players on the Georgia team. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's at Stevenson High School right now, which has always been a freaking gold mine of players. I remember one year they sent like 25 players to Division I football in a certain senior class, but Nazir at Stevenson last year was at Cedar Grove, and now all our astute, leaned-in DawgNation recruiting fans will go, I know what you're talking about. Cedar Grove has Notori Johnson, Snow Cone, as everybody likes to call him here around DawgNation, and Justin Schaefer were his teammates during his freshman year at Cedar Grove. So they know Nazir really well, and it's almost like he knows those 2 boys will be there, and it's almost like, hey, I'm going to have friendly faces there when I go. He's actually moved around to 3 high schools so far in just 2 years. 6'5", 285, defensive tackle. Auburn commitment, Jaleel Irvin at Stevenson actually told me that he kind of sees a little bit of Trenton Thompson in his game because they both wear number 78. So I'm sure Dawg fans out there, if this young man can be anywhere near Trenton Thompson by the time he enrolls in 2020, then that'll be a big sign.
All right, guys, Nazir Stackhouse stacking the D-line. See what I did there?
Ooh.
3 years from now, so don't forget his name. 2020 is when he will be between the hedges. Recruiting never stops for Kirby Smart. You know, it's ongoing. I don't care if you win a championship, a national championship, you're right back on the recruiting trail, and that's the case this weekend, another big weekend. Who are some of the top guys in town for the Dawgs to impress?
Yeah, I like how you dropped that Dawgs in there, too. See, guys, she's really learning this stuff. So you got an official visit weekend. There's only 2 official visit weekends left before Georgia, when that dead period kind of shrouds everything. 3 big officials to look for right now. You've got Trey Hill, nation's number 2 offensive guard out of Houston County, just fresh off that visit from Auburn, an official visit earlier this year for the Iron Bowl. Big visit, Georgia, Auburn. He's not went about naming any finalists or top 4s or top 3s or anything like that. I do believe it will come down to Auburn and Georgia. Also, big receiver, 4-star wide receiver Tommie Bush out of Texas. Georgia seems to be full at receiver, but Tommie Bush, 6'4", kind of in that Matt Landers mold. He's going to give Georgia an official and give Georgia a look and everything right there. So, lots of official visits that are on the way right now, and also a recent Florida decommit, Devod Wilson, actually teammates with Rashad Wildgoose, the current Georgia commit for 2018, just recently decommitted from Florida. Big cornerback, also going to come in town on an official visit. And you're going to see a lot of official and unofficial visitors, because these Saturday weekends are at a premium right now for recruiting, especially before the dead period.
I'll say it again, 2.5 weeks until the early signing period, December 20th through 22nd. And with the dead period, that's only 13 days of official recruiting left. So, Jeff, who are some of the big names that we need to be looking for to nail down on this early signing period?
Well, Georgia fans, if they have their top 5, I think the first name has to be Jamari Sawyer, the 5-star, nation's number 1 OG. I like to drop that in there. Out of Pace Academy, just a tremendous offensive lineman, about 6'4", 325 pounds, 345 pounds. He's a guy that will make his decision finalized on the early signing period, the first day there. There's tight end Luke Ford. He's the nation's number 2 tight end. You got a lot of other big targets out there for the Bulldogs. You've got what's going to happen with Otis Reese at linebacker, the Michigan commitment, Channing Tindall, the linebacker there. The Bulldogs are in play for a lot of guys. Obviously, they're trying to add another cornerback as well, but start thinking about those top targets. You also have to include Trey Hill in there as well. Would give the Georgia the chance to be very greedy and take the nation's number 1 offensive guard, Sawyer, potentially, and pair him with the nation's number 2 offensive guard in Trey Hill for the interior of that Georgia line. And when you think about those running backs that are coming back, the running backs that will sign in 2018, and they're going to have a monster running game for years to come.
Who else, though, Jeff? Let me go to the Facebook Live comment section and see if we have anyone else here asking. Jason Bow says, what about Isaac Stewart?
Isaac Taylor Stewart is a guy, probably if we had to give him the fastest man title in the nation, he earned it at the opening. He even blazed past Tyson Campbell out of American Heritage. He's out of Helix High School in San Diego in California. Isaac Taylor Stewart is a guy that's long rumored to be kind of trending towards Texas A&M or USC. He's supposed to give Georgia an official visit this weekend or maybe next weekend. You'll notice that a lot of Georgia's maybe A1A big-time targets like Cade Mays, of course, got to include that name when you talk about maybe the 5 got-to-get-ins for Georgia's class that they'll take under any circumstances. The 5-star offensive tackle from Knoxville is also one of those guys. Alante Taylor is also one of those guys. But that next visit weekend is going to have a lot of big names, and Taylor Stewart might show up on the weekend of the 8th, this coming weekend, or also on the 15th.
Facebook is blowing up over Tyson Campbell. Just about everybody in all caps wants to know what Tyson Campbell's status is, including Eric Clark with about 10 question marks. So
10 question marks.
Jeff, help him out.
All right, so I'll give you 10 quick answers. Tyson Campbell, very fast, nation's number 3 corner. Not as fast as Isaac Taylor Stewart. American Heritage, everybody remembers the pipeline there for the plantation pipeline from American Heritage to Georgia. Sony Michel, Marshall Morgan, Isaiah McKenzie. Miami's really in big with him right now. It's the closest program. Maybe that Miami result he'll have to compare with the Georgia result in the ACC versus the SEC championship games. Look for some in-home visits to happen right now. with Tyson Campbell. I wouldn't be shocked to see Georgia get in home with him sometime in the next 2 or 3 days. You got to see Tyson Campbell take an official visit to Georgia. His last visit was way back in July. He did love it. But the thing with Tyson Campbell is he's one of those guys, if you want to check the expiration date on his decision, that's going to be February the 7th of 2018. He's not an early signing dude. Kind of funny how one of the fastest players in the country is going to take his own sweet time on making his decision. And he's a prize prospect out of South Florida. You're going to have to wait a while on that one. I think that one will go a long time. It'll go all 15 rounds.
There's always a question about Justin Fields. So Kyle wants to know if there's any chance of him flipping, possibly to Florida.
What is it? Let's get a Wheel of Fortune wheel back here, Hannah, and let's spin it every week. And it'll land on Florida, it'll land on Texas A&M. I'm going to tell you what, we get a wheel and it should say Georgia, 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 and flip them. I mean, some people would think like we were telling there's no such thing as Santa Claus if Justin Fields was even to look at another school. And that turns out maybe I understand the viewpoint, guys, I really do, but like Georgia seems pretty good at quarterback right now. But those recruiting, you guys have been trained very well by your sensei, Brandon Adams. You guys just want to stockpile all the 5 stars you can. The questions today about Justin Fields after Georgia just wins the SEC title with a 5-star quarterback in his freshman year, I get them, I understand them. That's why we cover recruiting so hard on DawgNation.com. But I'm going to tell you, get off the ledge about Justin Fields. He is tremendously likely to show up at Georgia.
All right, we'll take a few more questions before moving on. Brian Nash wants to know, does the Fulmer hire make Cade Mays reconsider Tennessee? Fair question. I think no, but fair question.
It's a great question, but it's not the Fulmer hire.
Yeah.
Fulmer's got to hire a dude that can coach some football. It's got to be a name like Les Miles. It's got to be a name like Chad Morris. You see all the reports today online about how Georgia's Mel Tucker got an interview for the Tennessee job today with Coach Fulmer. And I think that's the most important part. There has got to be a hire by Tennessee that galvanizes the fan base and unites the fan base, but it can't be anyone else without a proven track record. If everybody saw on social media last week, Cade Mays set his top 3, and Rocky Top and Big Orange was not in there. Something to consider.
Yeah, and Alan says UT is a dumpster fire, so hopefully he won't go there anyways. That's Jeff Simtel. I'm Hannah Chalkers. Thanks so much for joining us on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. Big weekend coming up for Georgia high school football. The championships are Friday and Saturday in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I'll be doing sideline for 4 of the games, so watch for me there. Me and good old Sam Crenshaw are splitting time on the sidelines. Jeff, who are some of the big guys that our dog viewers here need to have their eye on?
Well, there's lots of dogs or dog interest in the GHSA state championships at the Bend. I think so many names. I think there's all but one game that has a very, keep your ears up, DawgNation type interest. You got Kyrus Jackson, who will be on the sidelines at least. I don't know his status. Not many people do about whether he'll be on the field for Peach County. 2018 4-star commit, kind of the ambassador, the Pied Piper of this class, does a lot of work galvanizing the class behind the scenes. Now, Sergio Allen, got some homework for you guys right now. I want everybody out there to remember that name. Probably going to be one of the nation's top 50 players, 100 players by the time his senior season rolls around. Of course, the name on everybody's mind is Adam Anderson. If you saw Rivals.com, they moved him up to a 5-star today. 6'4", probably about 220. Elite pass rusher, committed to Georgia, really likes Georgia a lot, out of Rome, Georgia. Definitely going to be a Wolf to join the Wolf Pack. You've also got some interesting things right there. The Fromm brothers, Dylan and Tyler. Dylan is the quarterback out of Warner Robins, undefeated Warner Robins, who will meet Adam Anderson in Rome. And Tyler is the big receiving option. Those guys are very interesting for Georgia fans because that's the Fromm family. I kind of think the Fromm family is the first family of Georgia football right now. They're doing a lot at Warner Robins, an uphill battle there with Rome. I think Rome is probably the best team playing left in the classification because of that defensive line, because of that offensive line. You've got Blessed Trinity. You've got J.D. Bertrand in 2019, Georgia commit. Maris as John Fitzpatrick, 3-star Georgia commit. You got Otis Reese, the Michigan target in the Lee County, Coffee County game. Lots of notables for Georgia fans to watch all across. And don't sleep on Clinch County, way down there in Homerville. Clinch County has Tresman Marshall. Clinch County. They got Tresman Marshall, Four-star inside linebacker. Actually plays some quarterback for his team. But the name that's blown up across social media over the last maybe 7 days is Jamon Johnson. He is a guy, sophomore. Hannah Chalker, he is 6 feet 7 inches tall.
Big boy.
There is a viral video of him on Twitter where there's a over-the-shoulder throw. Young man just stabs his hand up there like he's got Velcro on his hands, catches it one-handed, brings it down, and just trucks that thing to the end zone. 6'7" sophomore wide receivers do not grow on trees, even down there in Homerville.
A lot to watch for on Friday and Saturday. In your opinion, what's the big game to watch? $22 admission for the whole day. So is it worth the price of a ticket, and what game do you think is going to be the best?
Ooh, good question, Hannah. I like the Marist Blessed Trinity game there a lot. I also like, Warner Robins is kind of funny because they're going to take maybe the uphill battle against Rome, but they actually have a win over a Coffee County team that's a higher classification. It was a 52-49 game. Lots of big games, and do not forget Coach Rush Propst in the finale. Colquitt County, down there in Moultrie, the Packers will take on Georgia Center, future Georgia Center and early enrollee Warren Erickson out of North Gwinnett. Great story there about North Gwinnett. They lost their, kind of franchise quarterback, Texas A&M commit Cade Fortin, right in August. Broken leg, bad injury, and they've somehow made it all the way to the penultimate prize in Georgia high school football. That would be the 7A state championship game.
Petey Wheatstraw says Coffee versus Lee. That's the game that he's got his eye on.
Coffee versus Lee. And, Lee County, make sure everybody knows, Otis Reese, Michigan been committed to Michigan since May of last year. Not been visiting Michigan all. Been visiting Georgia 3, 4, 5 times. Not giving out any interviews whatsoever, but Otis Reese will play his final high school game at the Mercedes-Benz for Lee County and its Trojans. A great test there with Coffee County. That's the nightcap on Friday night, the first day of all those games at the Benz. And you got to go to the Benz. If that ticket price is $22, I think walking around the Benz is probably worth about $6 out of that right there.
Yeah, you can't get into a Falcons game for that much. So, absolutely. Jerome Nottingham says Warner Robins is his hometown. So, Jerome, maybe you're going there. We're going to take some more comments here before we go off air. Thomas Bates says any recruits coming out of Brookwood.
Well, Brookwood's a school where Georgia's kind of been off and on lately. It's the home of Rennie Curran. But Matthew Hill, Georgia oddly never offered him. I think they just didn't evaluate him. They didn't value him as much as other guys at receiver. Maybe they thought he was a safety. That evaluation and that offer came very late. Matthew Hill ended up committing with Auburn. And then you've got, Brookwood's a school. Georgia even lost out on Leonard Warner III last year to Florida State. That was maybe a casualty of the scholarship numbers and Georgia being very tight right there. Two things I want fans to know. I want to make sure I squeeze it into our show. Watch out for Luke Ford. Luke Ford's a guy that for the longest time had said that he was going to take it all the way to National Signing Day, was going to kind of just pump the brakes on his decision. There's a chance he can make his decision on December the 20th. That's the first day of the early signing period. I think Georgia is in a really good spot right there for him. That's a name to kind of think about as well. But lots of things going on. Things are going to change up and down so much right now with Georgia recruiting. But for the most part, it's going to wind up as being good news for the Dogs.
Alan is asking about the Adam Anderson injury. I know you touched on Adam Anderson a minute ago, but what is the injury?
Well, Adam Anderson had one of those knees, and of course, all of DawgNation went like, oh my gosh, is this another Georgia commitment or future Bulldog that has a season-ending injury? Because he had a scary knee injury last week against Buford, and he was a dominating presence against Buford last week. Had a scary knee injury, returned to the game. His status is clear. He'll be in the lineup against Warner Robins for the state championship for Rome High School as Rome attempts to go back-to-back in its classification with a perfect season nonetheless.
Willie Toombs wants to know any recruits coming out of Waycross. We're really testing your knowledge here, Jeff.
Oh, man, that's way down deep. There's currently nobody Georgia is really trending highly with right now out of Waycross. But that's not to say that there's not great players down there. They've been great players down that way, and there will be more to come, I'm sure.
Jordan Perry says you have to pick one, Tyndall, Reese, or Walker.
Pick one? Great question. I like that one. Those are those spotlight questions. Those are on-the-spot questions. Tyndall, Reese, Walker. I'm going to pick Otis Reese just because he's the thumper and maybe the physical presence that a guy like the Georgia defense is going to pride itself on for many, many years to come. But Channing Tindall, very explosive, not too far behind.
Let's see here what other comments we've got. Derek Eady, what about Eastman, home of Leonard Floyd?
Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd went through junior college ranks, now a multimillionaire for the Chicago Bears. Eastman's not really hopping with a lot of big-time prospects for the 2018 and 2019 classes. So keep trying, Eastman. Currently, there's not a lot of Bulldog targets on the board right now.
I found my favorite comment of the show. John Thurmond, how about out of LHS, Lassiter High School Trojans? That's where I went to high school.
Well, Derek Allen is going to Notre Dame. He did take everybody kind of thought that Allen might wind up, or maybe it might be a guy where Georgia would kind of rally for him late. Derek Allen's a big physical safety. Derek's just a great kid, great All-American young man. He always strikes me as a guy that, you know, he hangs out with the guys who build computers, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then he also plays football. He's a guy to me that's a fantastic football player, and the portion of his life which will be dominated by football will be a very cool chapter. But then he's so well-rounded and got so many other things in his life that he will move on and he will transition away from his playing days quite fine, even though Mr. Allen does not like to take pictures. So he's going to have a hard time in that selfie game when he gets to college.
All right, that's all the time we have for comments. But hey, you guys can ask Jeff questions all week long. This is my last Before the Hedges until next year. BA, Brandon Adams, is taking over. They're actually going on the road. They'll be at Marlowe's, different Marlowe's all over Georgia. So catch us right here on DawgNation for the updates on where those are going to be every Tuesday evening. So tell us a little bit more about that show.
Well, it's going to be kind of revolving around the Atlanta area, and Marlowe's is just a great place for everything. We hang out, we meet a lot of people. The Brookhaven location is currently #1 on our DawgNation.com Marlowe's restaurant franchise location rankings. Lots of people come out, they ask great questions. As always, you're going to get great food, great cocktails there. And I'm going to let you guys out there, because we always value reader feedback, and I think the Facebook comment section is the best suggestion box out there. So please, if you want to see more of Hannah Chalker, which we all do, you should put that down there in the comment section. Management will pay heed to that. Brandon Adams is a great 5-star host, but I think Mrs. Chalker has definitely handled herself well so far on Before the Hedges, and make sure you let her know that in your comments.
Thanks, Jeff. I will be back 6 weeks from now, though. We will continue the show, and the show, again, one more time, will be on Tuesdays now, so you don't check us out here on Mondays after this. But a lot more to come. Hey, where can everyone find you on social media?
At Jeff Sintel on Twitter, or www.DawgNation.com/recruiting. Remember, Wednesday Night Live, still 8:30. That's not going anywhere. For some reason, they got me flying solo on that thing still. Maybe we should get some upgrade in the host department there. Hope everybody's having themselves a good time this week, celebrating an SEC championship. I'm sure everybody's buying everything possible that has SEC champions. You know, that's the vanity plates, that's the license, that's the T-shirts, that's the comforters, that's the coffee mugs. The Georgia economy and all things red and black will be buoyed by the Bulldogs' win on Saturday.
Absolutely. All right, congratulations, guys. So happy for you, and we'll see you next time on DawgNation. Go Dogs!